everybody, and welcome to today's video. I'm going to be doing a bit of an unscripted video today. I haven't actually made any notes about this, but I have been playing a visual novel that has just come out on Nintendo Switch called Werewolf The Apocalypse, Heart of the Forest. It comes to us from an indie developer called Walkabout Games and was released back in 2020 on PC, but like I mentioned, it has just come out on Switch. Now, this game has a pretty good reputation on the PC. From the critic reviews, it has a Metacritic aggregate of 77, and as you can see from this footage alone, it's actually a very attractive game in the sense that its art is very distinctive, original, and very much captures the appeal of Werewolf The Apocalypse as a franchise. Now, if you haven't heard of Werewolf The Apocalypse, that's simply because you haven't played too many of the World of Darkness, a series of pen and paper RPGs, and fair enough, since in the West, in the world of video games anyway, we generally only are aware of, Vampire the Masquerade. Werewolf The Apocalypse is one of the others from the expanded World of Darkness franchise, with other ones being also Mage the Ascension, Wraith the Oblivion, and Changeling the Dreaming. I don't believe any of those last three, Mage, Wraith, or Changeling, have actually been turned into video games. There has been a couple of the Werewolf The Apocalypse ones, but not that many. And this is perhaps the first attempt to try and establish interest in it again. It is very much a visual novel. I do have a review up on digitallydownloaded.net that you can also check out. And overall, I quite liked it. I don't think it is quite as good as its reputation, I guess. My review is a little bit lower than the Metacritic aggregate, but I did enjoy my time with it. It is a nice, short 3-hour game, or 4 depending on your reading speed, I guess. But you will get through it without it putting too much stress on your backlog. And that's a good thing again, because that's... it's always good when a developer respects your time, and I think 3 to 4 hours is really what this game is worth. They didn't try to push it out longer than it needed to be. They got in, made their message, and then got back out again. And that is, once again, I would encourage more developers to do that. I think that is mature design, that they don't feel like they need to give you unlimited content to make it worth your while. They just give you what they think the story is worth and let you get on with your life. That being said, I do think there are some weaknesses with it in terms of it as a storytelling experience, and I wanted to use this video to talk about those, again in a quite general sense. I haven't scripted any of this, I'm just really talking off the top of my head, but the thing that strikes me with it, and it actually applies to a lot of other visual novels, including the Vampire the Masquerade VNs that are also on the Switch, there is a real sense as you play through these that they're kind of talking down to you. And by that I mean they're not treating you like you're stupid in the sense that they're using little words. they do use plenty of... it's quite beautiful, the quality of the writing in isolation. But in terms of its themes, and in terms of what the game wants you to take out of it, it is very blunt, and it doesn't leave much room for the interpretation. So this one is a very positive and proactive about LGTB themes. It's also very pro-anarchy, really. It's very anti-capitalist in its tone. It's very critical of establishment, and that kind of fits in nicely with the whole werewolf theme. But the game is also very blunt about all of these things, and it really hits you so hard that you can't look past those themes. You can't miss them if you're not paying attention. And while you might think that that's a good thing, generally speaking, in terms of creative writing, it's not encouraged. Generally, well, I'm pretty sure in almost any case, when you go along to a creative writing course, the first thing you really learn is that you should always be about showing, not telling. You need to give the audience, the reader, the tools that they need to fill in meaning and to come up with their own interpretation of what they've just read. But at the same time, you don't want to be so obvious about it that there is no room for interpretation, because at that point it's really more... it's quite laboured as a piece of writing, and it doesn't allow for any discussion around the work, so it's quite dull to read. And I feel like that's quite the case. That's the case with a lot of visual novels that come out of Western developers. They have these ideas that they want to share, which is great, but then they make sure that there's no way that you can kind of miss the theme that they're driving at, and that doesn't generate a whole lot of interesting thoughts as you're playing through the game. So for an example, when I was playing Steins;Gate, to use just one visual novel off the top of my head from Japan, that game filled me with all kinds of interesting thoughts about any number of philosophies, from time travel itself, which is a core theme of the game, through to everything about Japanese culture, the Akihabara subculture that it really satirizes in a lot of points, and it just has this wealth of additional themes that you can go away and think about. It's not really discussed in blatant terms in the text, but it's all kind of there, and if you want to then think about it at greater depth, you can do so. Whereas with this one, with Werewolf The Apocalypse, I came out of the game without anything to think about. I've just been told what I should think as I was playing along with it. And while you do have an awful lot of options and decisions you can make with a lot of different endings to go through, it really is a very decision-heavy game. They don't really change the interpretation that you can take out of the game. It is still what it was, obviously, from the opening line of the thing, which, again, I find is quite kind of poor writing. It's not to say that Western developers can't do this stuff well. A really good example, which I probably don't talk enough about on this channel, but I really should, because I think it is a magnificent bit of video game writing. Kentucky Route Zero is a really beautiful bit of video game writing. It is very intense, very intelligent. It's very interpretive in that it gives you a full, complete narrative that you're not going to have any trouble following along with, but at the same time, the way that it taps into the American road trip tradition and the stories that come out of that, the way that it really kind of establishes an American Gothica about its tone, its atmosphere, and so on. All of these things draw into this very deep, rich culture and heritage of American literature. And Kentucky Route Zero really belongs as part of that discussion, that you can then go and read additional books. You can find parallel themes in other texts, and it becomes a very engaging and rewarding reading experience. The Werewolf The Apocalypse game, and all the other World of Darkness pen and paper games, they have the material there to offer something really compelling, because they all have this gothic punk aesthetic to them. They're all quite aggressive in the way that they present their stories and their characters. They're also very progressive in the sense that they really encourage you to engage with these alternative lifestyle type characters, and really it's all metaphor for kind of subcultures within the real world. The vampires, the werewolves, they're all underground kind of subcultures, and the game really pulls those parallels quite heavily across. But the way that the video game handles it is just, again, it's quite laboured, and it doesn't really work for me in that sense. Now, with that being said, as an interpretation of the actual mechanics of the pen and paper game, I think that this Werewolf The Apocalypse title is really effective. It is only a visual novel. It is not an RPG in any level. It tries to pull these smokes and mirrors out to make it look like it is an RPG, because as you can see from the video screen, at the top of the screen there are a couple of different statistics to track and so on, but those are really just ways of reflecting the decisions that you make along the way, and different decisions will affect those statistics, pushing them up or down depending on the decision. Really, it is just a way of tracking the progress that you're making through the story, and what dialogue options will be open to you later down the track. There's no dice rolls, which is fine, because the World of Darkness games are not heavy on the dice rolls in the first place, but it's also very mechanically light. It's not like any of these statistics have any effect on anything other than the actual decisions that you get to make with the narrative. So while it might look very simple and not really an RPG, it's actually a really effective way of recreating the appeal of World of Darkness, because World of Darkness is not a RPG series for people that like their dice rolls, like Dungeons and Dragons is, for example. World of Darkness is very much more about the storytelling experience, and it's quite big with the live action role-playing community for that reason. They get to play dress up and be vampires and werewolves and whatever for the day, but it really is very a physical kind of narratively engaging storytelling thing. It's kind of like you get to recreate scenes from Buffy or Angel, or you know, those old kind of TV shows, that it's that kind of pulpy gothic fantasy that it plays into, and really the mechanics are so secondary to that they're kind of irrelevant, and that to see that in the actual visual novel is actually a nice thing as well. I think that this is a very true pen and paper style story. So that's enough for this video. Like I said, it is very unscripted, so I'm sorry if I sound a little bit rambly, but I did have some thoughts having played this over the weekend quite intensely and really enjoying it. I still had some thoughts about it structurally that I wanted to share. I also go into them a little bit more depth in my review on digitallydownloaded.net, so be sure to check that out. Otherwise, thank you as always for watching. Please do click that like and subscribe button if you enjoy my videos. That way you'll get to see them all as they pop up. If this happens to be my first video that you've watched, then I do want to let you know. Usually I do script them, but this time I just didn't. But also please do consider backing me on Patreon if you enjoy my videos, because supporting me for even $1 a month will help me to continue to grow this channel and what I'm doing with it, and I'm hoping you're enjoying what you're seeing. So thanks as always for watching again, and we will see you at the next video.